In 1993, Daniel Kahneman asked volunteers to submerge one hand in painfully cold water, 14 degrees Celsius, and hold it there for 60 seconds. It hurt. When the minute was over, they pulled their hand out. Then, he asked them to do it again with the other hand. This time, the trial lasted 90 seconds. The first 60 seconds were identical, the same sharp, biting cold. But for the final 30 seconds, the water temperature was secretly raised by 1 degree to 15. Still uncomfortable, still cold, but slightly, noticeably less painful. After both trials, Kahneman asked a simple question. If you had to repeat one of these experiences, which would you choose? The rational answer is obvious. 60 seconds of pain is less suffering than 90. Everything the short trial contains, the long trial also contains, plus 30 additional seconds of discomfort. The majority chose the long trial. They voluntarily chose more pain because their memory of it was better. It ended on a less painful note, and that slightly improved ending rewrote their recollection of the entire experience. Kahneman, together with psychologist Barbara Fredrickson, named the phenomenon the peak end rule. When people evaluate a past experience, they do not calculate the total amount of pleasure or pain over its duration. Instead, memory performs a brutal simplification. It takes a snapshot of 2 moments, the most intense point, the peak, and the final moment, the end, and uses those 2 data points to construct the entire remembered evaluation. Everything in between, the hours, the long stretches of moderate feeling, is largely discarded. And the total duration? It barely matters at all. Kahneman called this duration neglect. Your memory is not a video recording. It is a photograph album with only 2 pages. To prove this was not a laboratory trick, Kahneman and his colleague Donald Redelmeyer took the research into a clinical setting involving genuine, significant pain, colonoscopy procedures, which in the era before modern sedation could involve sustained discomfort lasting anywhere from minutes to over an hour. During the procedure, patients reported their pain every 60 seconds on a scale from 0 to 10, giving the researchers a complete moment-by-moment profile. Afterward, patients gave a single overall rating of their discomfort. The results confirmed the rule with remarkable precision. Retrospective evaluations were predicted by 2 factors: peak pain intensity and pain during the final 3 minutes. The total duration had almost no effect. A patient who endured 40 minutes with a harsh peak and a painful ending remembered the experience as worse than a patient who endured 60 minutes with a lower peak and a gentler conclusion. More time, more total pain, but a better memory. Redelmeyer and Kahneman then ran a follow-up that borders on the absurd. They randomly assigned colonoscopy patients to 2 groups: standard procedure or a modified version where the scope was left in place for 3 extra minutes at the end without being moved. This created a sensation that was uncomfortable but distinctly milder than the procedure itself. The patients who had the longer, objectively more uncomfortable procedure rated their experience as significantly less unpleasant, and they were far more likely to return for future screenings. By adding pain, the doctors improved the memory. By making the ending slightly better, they rewrote the patient's entire recollection and potentially saved lives. Because the patients who remembered less suffering were the ones who came back for the screening that might catch cancer early. This is deeply irrational, and it has enormous implications for how we experience, evaluate, and spend money on virtually everything. Because every company that sells experiences, and in the modern economy that is nearly every company, is either exploiting the peak end rule or failing to understand it. Consider IKEA. If you have ever visited one, you know the experience is objectively exhausting. A mandatory labyrinthine path through every department, an unwieldy cart through crowded aisles, a long checkout line, flat-pack boxes carried to your car, hours of assembly with an Allen wrench and cryptic pictographic instructions. But just past the checkout registers, before you walk out the door, IKEA sells you a hot dog for $1 or a soft-serve ice cream for 50 cents. A tiny, cheap, unexpectedly satisfying treat at the precise moment your experience concludes. This is not a random snack bar. This is peak-end engineering. The hot dog does not erase 3 hours of frustration. It does not need to. It only needs to be the last thing you experience, because your memory will compress the entire visit into 2 snapshots, the peak moment and the ending. The hot dog rewrites the ending. The ending rewrites the memory. The memory determines whether you come back. Luxury hotels have internalized this at an even deeper level, investing disproportionate resources into exactly 2 moments: arrival and departure. The welcome drink, the warm greeting, the personalized note in the room create the peak. At checkout, many high-end hotels offer a small gift, a seamless departure, or a handwritten thank you card. Everything in between, the slow room service, the unreliable Wi-Fi, the hallway noise, matters far less. A hotel that delivers an average stay with a brilliant arrival and a flawless departure will be rated higher than a hotel that delivers a genuinely superior experience but fumbles the ending. Disney theme parks are the most sophisticated peak-end architects on the planet. The fireworks show at the end of the night is not just entertainment. It is a calculated emotional climax designed to serve as both peak and end of a day that almost certainly included 2-hour lines, sore feet, $12 sandwiches, and at least one child's meltdown. Nobody remembers the lines. Everyone remembers the fireworks. The same principle explains a pattern that puzzles many travelers. Why a mediocre vacation with a spectacular final day is often rated higher than an excellent vacation with an anticlimactic ending. 2 weeks in paradise, followed by a delayed flight, a lost suitcase, and a cold, rainy arrival home. The memory of the entire trip is contaminated by the ending. Conversely, a chaotic, stressful trip that culminates in a single breathtaking sunset dinner on the last evening, that dinner becomes the memory. The stress dissolves. Travel advisors who understand this recommend front-loading the logistical hassles and saving the best experience for the final day. Not because this changes the objective quality of the trip, but because it rewrites how the trip will be remembered. And in the experience economy, memory is the product. The restaurant industry provides a masterclass in peak-end failure and success. A beautifully prepared meal in an elegant dining room, but the waiter disappears for 20 minutes when you want the check. And when it finally arrives, a service charge has been added without explanation. The food was extraordinary. The wine was perfect. But the ending, the frustrating wait, the surprise charge, overwrites everything. You walk to your car irritated. When a friend asks about the restaurant next week, you say, "The food was good, but..." And the "but" is the ending. Now consider a different restaurant, where the food is merely solid, competent but unremarkable. But the waiter remembers your name, brings a complimentary dessert at the end of the meal, and walks you to the door with a warm goodbye. You drive home smiling. When the same friend asks, you say, You have to try this place. The first restaurant was objectively better in every measurable culinary dimension. The second restaurant understood which moments actually survive in memory. The digital economy has learned these lessons with surgical precision. When you complete a course on an educational platform, well-designed apps display a congratulatory animation, a certificate, a summary of what you achieved. Peak-end engineering applied to learning. The ending is deliberately elevated to ensure a positive memory that drives you to purchase the next course. When you finish a workout on a fitness app, the celebration screen, your stats, your personal record, an animated badge, is not vanity. It is the ending being engineered to override the 30 minutes of discomfort that preceded it. Your memory of the workout becomes the badge, not the burning muscles. But companies that neglect the ending pay an enormous, invisible price. An airline with a comfortable flight and a chaotic 40-minute baggage claim process. A subscription service that works beautifully until the moment you try to cancel and are trapped in a labyrinth of dark patterns and hidden buttons. These ending failures contaminate the memory of the entire product. The flight was smooth, but you remember the carousel. The service was useful, but you remember the cancellation rage. The peak may have been positive, but the ending is what you carry out the door. The entertainment industry has been quietly shaped by the peak-end rule in ways most audiences never notice. Netflix invests enormous resources in the final episodes of its series, not just for storytelling, but because the ending determines whether viewers recommend the show. A series that is mediocre for 7 episodes, but delivers a stunning finale, generates more positive word of mouth than a series that is excellent for 9 episodes, but stumbles at the end. This explains the disproportionate outrage when beloved television series deliver disappointing conclusions. Fans who invested dozens of hours feel that a bad ending did not just ruin the finale, it retroactively ruined the entire series. The hundreds of hours of enjoyment are compressed into irrelevance by duration neglect. The last episode overwrites everything. The music industry learned this decades ago. The encore at a concert, the band saving their greatest hit for the final moment, is not an afterthought. It is the most strategically important moment of the entire evening. A concert where the biggest song fuses with the ending sends the audience home with peak emotion and final moment merged into one. The memory of the entire night is magnificent, even if the sound was poor during the opener and the beer line stretched 30 minutes. Stand-up comedians structure their entire set around this rule instinctively. The closing joke is rehearsed more than any other. A comedian with a strong middle but a weak closing will be rated lower than one with a weaker middle and a devastating final minute. Even romantic relationships are evaluated through this lens. Research suggests that how a relationship ends disproportionately affects how the entire relationship is remembered. A 3-year relationship that concludes with kindness and mutual respect may be recalled with warmth. The same 3-year relationship ending in betrayal is remembered as terrible from the beginning, even if the first 2.5 years were genuinely happy. The breakup rewrites the love story, always. The peak end rule carries a disturbing personal implication that Kahneman explored at length. He argued that there are 2 versions of you, the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self lives in the present moment, processing every second as it happens. Consider a father spending a Saturday afternoon at the park with his daughter. For 2 hours, the experiencing self registers sunshine, laughter, the texture of grass, the sound of her voice, hundreds of small, genuine moments of happiness. Then, in the final 10 minutes, she falls off the swings and scrapes her knee badly. Tears, blood, panic. They rush to the car and drive home in silence. The experiencing self's total account shows 110 minutes of joy and 10 minutes of distress. But the remembering self codes the entire afternoon through the peak end rule. The peak was the injury. The end was the silent car ride. When someone asks him on Monday how his weekend was, he says, "It was rough. She got hurt at the park." 2 hours of happiness, deleted. The remembering self constructs the story afterward, and it does so using only 2 snapshots, ignoring duration, compressing everything into a verdict. These 2 selves constantly disagree, and Kahneman's uncomfortable conclusion is that most decisions are made by the remembering self. We choose our next vacation based on how we remember the last one. We choose restaurants based on the memory, not the experience. We choose products based on a story our brain told us, a story built from 2 snapshots and a massive amount of deleted footage. We are not optimizing our lives for the best experiences. We are optimizing for the best memories. And those are not the same thing. A retired couple looks back on 40 years of marriage. The experiencing self accumulated tens of thousands of ordinary, pleasant, unremarkable days. Mornings with coffee, evenings with conversation, weekends with nothing in particular. The remembering self kept almost none of it. It kept the wedding, the birth of their child, the terrible year when they almost separated, and the last vacation they took together. 4 snapshots from 40 years. That is the story of their marriage, as their memory tells it. The other 14,000 days, the ones that were actually their life, are gone. So what do you do with this knowledge? If you are designing an experience for others, a product, a service, a presentation, a dinner party, invest disproportionately in 2 moments: the emotional peak and the ending. Those are the only moments that will survive in your audience's memory. Everything else is filler that will be forgotten. If you are planning an experience for yourself, a vacation, a celebration, a project, save the best for last. Front-load the difficulties. End on the highest note you can. And if you are trying to build a life that feels meaningful in retrospect, understand that your brain is keeping an absurdly compressed record. It is not storing the Tuesday afternoons. It is not filing the quiet mornings. It is waiting for peaks and endings, and it will construct the narrative of your entire life from those fragments alone. Your brain is not a faithful historian. It is an editor with a brutally simple rule. Keep the peak, keep the end, delete everything else. And the story it tells you about your own life is not what happened. It is what it chose to remember.